Welcome to AG Academy. Today, we are starting a new learning journey, the Industrial Safety Foundation series. And this is Lesson 1, Unsafe Act versus Unsafe Condition. Whether you are a student, a fresher entering the workplace, or an experienced safety professional, understanding this difference is fundamental to workplace safety. But before we begin, I have a question for you. Can you spot the difference? Let's find out. Industrial safety is a journey. And we are going to build that knowledge one practical step at a time. We will start with Unsafe Act and Unsafe Condition, then move into Hazard versus Risk, Hazard Identification, Risk Assessment, JSAJHA, and then move to Hierarchy of Controls. So don't look at today's lesson as an isolated topic. It is the first step in building your safety mindset. And that journey starts with a very simple question. What exactly is unsafe? Now, look carefully at this workplace. Don't rush to the answer. Pause, look, think. What went wrong? Was the problem with the person? Was it with the workplace? Or could it be both? Keep that thought in mind, because the answer will help us understand the difference between an unsafe act and an unsafe condition. Let's start with our first concept, unsafe act. Ask yourself, what is the person doing? An unsafe act is an unsafe action or behavior performed by a person. It could be a choice, a movement, or an action that does not follow the required safe practice. So, when you see unsafe behavior, focus on the person and the action. That is your first clue. Let's make this practical. A worker not wearing required PPE. A worker becoming distracted while performing a task. Someone bypassing a required safety procedure. Or using equipment or a tool incorrectly. These are examples of unsafe acts because the unsafe element is connected to what the person is doing. So whenever you observe behavior, ask, is the action itself unsafe? Here's a simple way to remember it. Person. Action. Unsafe act. So, when you're observing a workplace, don't just look at the equipment. Look at the people too. Ask yourself, what is the person doing? If the unsafe element is the action, you are looking at an unsafe act. Now let's look at the second concept, unsafe condition. This time, don't look at the person's behavior. Look around the workplace. Ask, what is wrong with the workplace? An unsafe condition is a hazardous condition that exists in the workplace. It can involve equipment, the environment, or the work area itself. And importantly, the condition can exist even before anyone takes an unsafe action. Let's look at some examples. A slip hazard on the floor. A missing machine guard. Exposed electrical wiring. Or a blocked emergency exit. These are unsafe conditions because the problem exists in the workplace or equipment. So this time, don't ask, what is the person doing? Ask, what is wrong with the workplace? Here's your second memory rule. Workplace. Hazard. Unsafe condition. So remember, for an unsafe act, look at the action. For an unsafe condition, look at the condition. This simple distinction will help you identify unsafe situations much faster. Now let's put the two concepts side by side. For an unsafe act, person action. For an unsafe condition, workplace hazard. So, what is the key difference? Action versus condition. If you're unsure when observing a workplace, start with this simple question. Am I looking at something a person is doing or something unsafe that exists? Now it's your turn. Look at this situation. Unsafe Act or Unsafe Condition? Think carefully. The answer is Unsafe Act. Why? Because the unsafe element is the person's action. The worker is not following the required safe practice, and that makes it an unsafe act. Let's try another one. Look at the situation. Unsafe Act or Unsafe Condition? What's your answer? The answer is Unsafe Condition. Why? Because the hazard exists in the workplace itself. The condition is unsafe, even before we consider what a worker may do. Now let's make it a little more challenging. Look carefully at this situation. What do you see? First, there is a missing machine guard. That is an unsafe condition. Now, the worker is operating the machine without the required guard. That is an unsafe act. So, can one situation contain both? Absolutely. One situation can have both an unsafe condition and an unsafe act. Now we come to an important part of professional safety thinking. When we see an unsafe act, our first reaction should not simply be, "Who made the mistake?" Instead, we should ask, "What happened? Why did it happen? What allowed it to happen? And most importantly, how can we prevent it from happening again?" Safety is not about blame. It's about understanding the situation and preventing recurrence. Unsafe behavior can have underlying causes. Maybe the person did not receive adequate training. Maybe there was time or production pressure. Maybe the person was tired or fatigued. Maybe supervision was not adequate. Or perhaps the procedure itself was not clear or practical. So don't stop at, "The worker did something unsafe." Ask the next question. Why did the unsafe behavior happen? That is how we begin to look beyond the behavior. Unsafe conditions also have underlying causes. Poor housekeeping can leave hazards in the work area. Poor maintenance can allow equipment problems to remain. Damaged equipment can create hazardous conditions. Poor workplace design can introduce unnecessary risks. And inadequate inspection can allow hazards to remain unnoticed. So don't just find the hazard, find the cause, and then fix the condition. So, what should you do when you identify an unsafe situation? First, see it. Recognize the hazard. Second, stop or avoid exposure when it is safe to do so. Third, report it. Fourth, correct it through the appropriate process. And finally, prevent it from happening again. So remember, see, stop, report, correct, prevent. But there's one important rule. Never put yourself at additional risk while trying to correct a hazard. Your safety comes first. Let's finish with a quick test. A worker is not wearing the required PPE. Unsafe act or unsafe condition? Unsafe act. Next. There's an oil spill on the floor. Unsafe act or unsafe condition? Unsafe condition. And finally, there's a missing machine guard, and the machine is being operated without it. Unsafe act, unsafe condition. Or both? Both. So remember, unsafe act, action. Unsafe condition, hazardous condition. And both can exist together. But our learning journey doesn't stop here. In the next lesson, we'll explore hazard versus risk. What's the difference? What exactly is a hazard? And how is it different from risk? We'll find out in Lesson 2. Until then, stay safe, prevent accidents, protect lives. Continue your industrial safety learning journey with AG Academy Industrial Safety and Manufacturing Excellence.